Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Payton Doyle, host of the Payton Doyle Show. Hope you all are having a fantastic day today. And today I'm going to be giving you my top 5 teams that will improve the most this season from last season. They're going to turn some heads. They're going to surprise a lot of people. I'm going to address Taysom Hill and the news on him maybe being the heir apparent to Drew Brees in New Orleans. I really don't agree with that, but I'm going to talk to you guys about it. But first, I'm going to talk about the big news coming out of Dallas in regards to quarterback Dak Prescott and his contract negotiations. So as we all know, the league is becoming a quarterbacks league and offenses are becoming more and more passing oriented. The quarterback is now the most important player on the field, maybe the most important player in any sport. I mean, after all, they're the only player in any sport to handle the ball literally on every single play of the game. But how much is too much to pay your quarterback? Ryan Tannehill just got 4 years, $118 million, nearly $30 million per year. I think it's around $29.5 million per year. And he isn't even the best player on his team. If I ask you guys, who's the best player on the Tennessee Titans, almost all of you would say Derrick Henry. And he just got franchise tagged. He couldn't get the long-term deal. He couldn't get his money, but he's the best player on his team. But he's not a quarterback. Ryan Tannehill had about 8 good games last season and a playoff run where all he did was not mess it up. That's all he did. We all know the only reason that the Tennessee Titans had any postseason success was Derrick Henry. But Tannehill gets $29.5 million per year. Dak Prescott was reportedly offered a 5-year, $175 million deal, which would pay him $35 million annually. That contract would make him the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. However, Mr. Prescott says that's not enough. Apparently, Dak wants up to $45 million a year. Sorry, Dak. I supported you. I thought you deserved a long-term deal, but I never thought you deserved $45 million a year. I'm sorry. Dak is set to make a little over $30 million this year off of the franchise tag. That will make him the 7th highest paid quarterback in the NFL this season. Here are all the quarterbacks ahead of him: Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Big Ben Roethlisberger, and Russell Wilson. The only quarterback on this list you can argue that Dak is better than is Jared Goff. But honestly, Jared Goff has proven more. He has more playoff appearances, and he's played in the Super Bowl. I've actually come up with a list of quarterbacks that I'd rather have than Dak Prescott this season. Let's get started. I got Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, Lamar Jackson, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen, and Drew Brees. That's 13 quarterbacks that are better than Dak right now. I didn't even mention young quarterbacks with potential to pass him like Drew Lock or Kyler Murray or Baker. Young quarterbacks with potential. I didn't even mention any of those guys. I mean, today, right now, who I'd rather have than Dak Prescott. That's 13 quarterbacks. Dak Prescott is on the same level as a Ryan Tannehill, a Derek Carr. If Dak wants $45 million a year, I think the Cowboys should actually let him walk. He can try and see who will give him $45 million a year. Honestly, I don't think he's going to get that anywhere else. And I don't know why. Obviously, you want your money. But Dak Prescott is the quarterback of America's most popular team. He's getting tons of endorsement deals. He's getting his money. I think it'd be a good idea for Dak Prescott to kind of do the Tom Brady way, take pay cuts so your team is better. Because you're getting plenty off of endorsements. Maybe even more than Tom Brady was in New England. Just because you're in Dallas. It's America's team. Everybody talks about the Cowboys. Love them or hate them. They're big news. They get headlines. and their players get tons of endorsements. Because if they pay Dak $45 million a year, you're looking at the highest paid quarterback in history, a top 5 paid running back, a top 5 paid wide receiver, and a top 5 paid defensive end, and an offensive line that's not cheap. Jalen Smith, he's nice. He's not going to get a huge deal, but he's not going to be cheap on the defensive end either. So, Cowboys might have to let Dak go, honestly. I supported Dak. I thought he deserved a long-term deal, but not for $45 million a year. I don't think that he's worth that much money. I think it would be a big mistake to give Dak Prescott $45 million a year. He's come up small in big games sometimes. And before Amari Cooper, he was okay, and then he got above average with Amari Cooper, and I don't think he's worth $45 million a year. That's a big price tag. If you give Dak Prescott $45 million a year, you have to give Patrick Mahomes at least $75 million a year because he's that much better. Taysom Hill is reportedly the next man up after Drew Brees retires. Here's what I have to say about that. He is, right now, the next man up. Just wait until practice starts and they get a good look at Jameis Winston and they get to see his arm. And they get to compare him with Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill could have started last season and he didn't. Teddy Bridgewater did. I've said this before, but I really, really, really don't see it with Taysom Hill at all. And to hear him getting compared to Lamar Jackson is just outright disrespectful. Lamar was a Heisman and now an MVP, so he's been at the top of the mountain at both levels, and he was also a unanimous MVP, second person to do that. Taysom Hill couldn't even get drafted. In college, he never had a season where he threw for 20 touchdowns. Never had a season, 20 touchdowns. If Sean Payton believed in him so much, Taysom would have started instead of Teddy Bridgewater last year. Taysom Hill is not an NFL quarterback by any means. And if the Saints start him next season, they will be making a huge, huge mistake. We might have to go back to calling them the Aints again. I think what this all is just Sean Payton probably likes him. He's probably a good teammate, probably a good locker room guy. And right now, Jameis hasn't practiced or learned the system or met any of his teammates yet in New Orleans. So Sean Payton is probably just saying, right now, Taysom is our guy. But I'm telling you, I'd rather have Jameis Winston than Taysom Hill any day of the week. Any day of the week. I'd rather have a lot of backup quarterbacks right now than Taysom Hill. No disrespect, but he can't play quarterback at the NFL level. I don't think he can. Taysom Hill on the NFL level reminds me of Tim Tebow. He's a less stubborn version of Tim Tebow and half the leader of Tebow was. Teams always wanted Tebow to move to tight end and be a utility guy, much like Taysom Hill is, but Tebow wanted to be a quarterback. He wanted to lead his team. Tebow, who was not that good of a quarterback in the NFL, was also one of the best college quarterbacks. Taysom Hill was not. So he might actually be worse than Tim Tebow. So if I were to compare Taysom Hill to someone, it most certainly would not be Lamar Jackson. That's just way out there. Relax on that. He is more like Tim Tebow at his best, and that Tim Tebow is probably better than him. I can't believe that they're even considering that. You have Jameis Winston, led the league in passing yards last season. We know his arm can do it. He said it himself. He said, if I stop with the interceptions, I'm going to be the best. And while he might not be the best, if he stopped throwing interceptions, Jameis Winston would be an elite quarterback. He has elite arm talent and physical abilities that Taysom Hill doesn't have. So get Jameis in practice, have him work out with his team, learn the system, and by next year, I'm telling you, Jameis Winston will be the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, if they're smart. Now that that's over, I'm going to get into my top 5 teams that are going to surprise you this season, maybe exceed your expectations of them. Starting off at number 5, I have the Buffalo Bills. I know that many other people are expecting the Bills to break out this season, so it probably won't surprise too many people if they win their division, especially since they made the playoffs last season and now it seems as if the Patriots dynasty is over. I feel like they were too young last season. They were too young. They played a competitive game against the Texans, but it was clear that the inexperience just got to Josh Allen, especially in the second half of that game. He started off the first half looking nice. Second half, the wheels fell off. And he had that one stupid play where he lateraled it and got lucky. They got the ball back. That was such a bad play. Anyways, they were inexperienced last year. But I really, really expect Josh Allen to have a breakout season this year and be a dark horse MVP candidate. I've been a supporter of Josh Allen's forever since he was in college. And I really, really, really expect him to have a breakout season this year. He has the weapons now. I love that they traded for Stephon Diggs because now that gives Josh Allen a legitimate number 1 option at wide receiver that he has never had. Even in college, he's never had a number 1 option. I'm a big believer in Josh Allen, and I'm expecting big, big things from him this season and his team as a whole. Coming in at number 4, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. I actually have a lot of faith in Tyrod Taylor this season. The supporting cast he has in Los Angeles this season is far superior than any supporting cast that he has ever had in his entire career. In Buffalo, he led a team to the playoffs that was just straight up awful. They didn't belong in the playoffs at all. His leading receiver was Charles Clay, and I'm pretty sure his next leading receiver was LaShawn McCoy. He had no receivers. He had no weapons. He even, that season that he led them to the playoffs, got benched for 2 games for Nathan Peterman, who started his legacy as the worst quarterback in history, if not the past decade for sure. They still made the playoffs anyways, despite 2 games of Nathan Peterman that if Tyrod played in, they might have won those games. I mean, the Chargers were a tough team to beat that year that they lost with Nathan Peterman when he threw, 5 interceptions in the first half? I don't remember who he started against the next year, or the next game. But they certainly would have played a lot better with Tyrod Taylor in the game than Nathan Peterman. Now, in Los Angeles, they have Mike Williams, who is one of the most dangerous deep threats in the league. He led the league in yards per reception, so he's very explosive, can take the top off of defenses. He has speed, and speed kills in this league. Then they also have Keenan Allen, who's one of the most reliable receivers in this league and is a multiple-time Pro Bowler. He'll help them move the chains. And Keenan Allen can also go deep too. I haven't even gotten to Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, that offensive line that they ramped up with Brian Bulaga and Trey Turner, or the defense with Derwin James, Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, and now Chris Harris Jr. from Denver. That team is stacked, and I would not be surprised if they turn some heads this season. Now at number 3, I have the Carolina Panthers. They finally have their answer at quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. I love Teddy Bridgewater, and I am a firm believer in him being a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. I believe if you put a good team around Teddy Bridgewater, he can take your team to the Super Bowl. And any team that has a quarterback that they believe in is better than one that doesn't believe in their quarterback. Last year, the Panthers didn't have a quarterback that they believed in. Now they do. The Panthers also have one weapon that nobody else in the entire NFL has, and that is Christian McCaffrey. He's a unicorn, one of a kind. There's simply nothing like him, and there may have never, ever been anything like him in the history of the league. He will help Teddy Bridgewater out so much on both the ground game and the passing game. He'll help balance that offense. DJ Moore is also a young wide receiver who can potentially be set to have a breakout season this year. One signing that went under the radar for the Carolina Panthers that I absolutely loved was the signing of Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is another player that I feel like every team needs to have an elite offense. The speedy receiver with decent hands that can just burn any cornerback one-on-one on the outside and take the top off of any defense. They even did that when they made the Super Bowl in 2015 with Ted Ginn Jr. He's their new Ted Ginn Jr. with better hands. I also loved their draft. Every pick was on the defensive end of the ball to try and fill gaps in that defense. Their biggest problem last season was their run stopping ability. They were horrible against the run on the defensive side of the ball. So they drafted Derrick Brown out of Auburn with the 7th overall pick to fill that gap at defensive tackle. I wouldn't be surprised if the Carolina Panthers maybe snuck into the playoffs as a wild card this season, especially now that there's an extra wild card. Now, number 2 with my surprise teams, I have the Detroit Lions. The Lions had a very rough season last year, but before Stafford was hurt, they didn't look awful. They were 3-4-1 when Stafford got hurt. Matt Stafford is one of the most underrated players in the league. Throughout his entire career, he's been tough, he's been loyal, he's put up great numbers, but he never gets any of the respect that he deserves because he's in Detroit and his team sucks. But things will turn around this year. Matt Stafford can put this team in contention for a playoff spot with Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones. That's a very underrated wide receiver duo right there. That's almost on the level of like Odell and Jarvis. They're up there with those guys. Plus, obviously, we expect Jeff Okudah to be a great cornerback that should help fill a hole for them at cornerback that they needed, especially after trading Darius Slay. But their most important pick to me was in the 2nd round, drafting DeAndre Swift, running back out of Georgia. I think he's going to be pretty good. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl level running back in this league. And that's really important because throughout Matt Stafford's entire career, he has never had a great running back. Reggie Bush was nice for a season. He ran for over 1,000 yards, but he was just a shell of his former self by that point. DeAndre Swift is going to fill a hole at running back that the Lions have failed to fill for the past decade. Also, just looking at their division, the Vikings lost 5 defensive starters in free agency, and they lost their offensive coordinator, Kevin Stefanski, and they also lost Stephon Diggs. The Bears, who even knows who their quarterback's going to be? Who knows what's going on in Chicago right now? Whole lot of stuff going on there. Probably the least talented team in that division, I'd say. And the Packers simply have Aaron Rodgers. But Matt Stafford has better weapons. I don't see how the Lions are much worse than Chicago or Minnesota or even Green Bay. The Lions might sneak into the playoffs and finish second in that division. And maybe, even with a couple of upsets, they could win the division. Who knows? Now coming in at my biggest surprise team for this 2020 season, the Denver Broncos. If there is any team that can potentially dethrone the Chiefs in the AFC West, it's the Denver Broncos. That offense is stacked with Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon at running back, and then Courtland Sutton, who I think is going to have top 10 production this season at the wide receiver position, and Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama, who many believe is the best wide receiver in this historic wide receiver class this year. They also still have an elite defense with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, who will be returning off of an ACL injury. When Drew Lock stepped in last season for the last 5 games, the whole team looked a lot better. He made the team better. He went 4-1 as a starter last season, and he looked tremendous. He beat the doors off of the Texans in Houston. Now, his offense is equipped with twice as many weapons as it was last year, and one specific player I'm predicting will look like a star this season is Courtland Sutton. He's got size, speed, good hands, athleticism. He's good at running routes. He can jump. We're going to be talking about the Drew Lock and Courtland Sutton quarterback and wide receiver duo a whole lot this season. Drew Lock might be a dark horse for MVP this season. It seems like the new trend for second-year quarterbacks to win the MVP. Drew Lock, he might be the next one. So that's it. That's my top 5 surprise teams for this season. My thoughts on Taysom Hill becoming the heir apparent to Drew Brees in New Orleans, and my thoughts on Dak Prescott and his contract situation. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to like and subscribe wherever you may be watching or listening to this show. And make sure to come back next week for the next episode. Thank you.